Look at your life through the lens of cold reality. You have been overlooked in boardrooms, interrupted in mid-sentence during social gatherings, and perhaps even mocked by those you considered peers. You let these moments slide because you were conditioned by a weak society to be the bigger person. You were told that taking the high road is the path of the virtuous. But in the brutal architecture of the real world, being the bigger person simply makes you a bigger target. It signals to the predators around you that your boundaries are permeable and your dignity is on sale for the price of nothing. You are being disrespected because you have made it free to do so. You have failed to set a tax on your sovereignty, and in the absence of a cost, the masses will always seek to devalue you. Thomas Shelby does not ask for respect. He does not beg for a seat at the table or raise his voice to be heard above the din of the common man. He engineers a reality where disrespect is not just a social faux pas, but a death sentence for the interests of the offender. He understands that in the high-stakes game of human interaction, you do not get what you deserve. You get what you have the power to negotiate and the ruthlessness to defend. By the end of this transmission, you will stop being a victim of social noise and become the architect of your own sovereignty. You will learn how to turn your presence into a premium commodity and your shadow into a warning. What Thomas Shelby executes in the industrial smoke and blood-stained alleys of 20th century Birmingham, Niccolò Machiavelli codified in the ruthless courts of 16th century Italy. Power has a universal language that transcends time, and it is a language written in the ink of strategic coldness. If you are tired of being a pawn on a board you don't control, if you are ready to stop reacting and start orchestrating, then you are in the right place. Subscribe to this channel and comment, "I am a Shelby," to activate your path to power. Let the masses stay loud. Let them clamor for attention like starving children. We stay lethal. We stay silent. We stay in control. The first lesson in making disrespect expensive begins with the absolute mastery of your own output. In the world of the Peaky Blinders, a man's word is his currency, but his silence is his fortress. We begin with the law of strategic silence. Never telegraph your blow. Never reveal the depth of your wound. Silence is the vacuum that draws your enemy into a trap of their own making. In the dimly lit, smoke-filled rooms of the garrison, a power dynamic is never established by who speaks the most, but by who controls the air between the words. Consider the moment Thomas Shelby sits across from Billy Kimber. Kimber is a man of noise, a man who believes that volume equates to authority. He shouts, he leans forward, he flashes his teeth, and he surrounds himself with the frantic energy of a man trying to prove he exists. Thomas Shelby, conversely, is a statue of frozen intent. He says almost nothing. He watches the smoke from his cigarette curl into the air with an indifference that is terrifying. To the common observer, Tommy might appear passive. To the strategist, he is performing a psychological dissection. By remaining silent, Tommy forces Kimber to fill the void. Because humans are naturally abhorrent of silence, Kimber begins to talk more, to boast more, and eventually to reveal his insecurities and his tactical openings. Tommy is not just listening, he is mapping the terrain of Kimber's ego. He knows that every word Kimber utters is a piece of intelligence he is giving away for free, while Tommy's silence remains an impenetrable wall. This is the embodiment of Machiavellian dissimulation. In The Prince, Machiavelli explains that a leader must be a great pretender and dissembler. He must possess the craftiness of the fox to recognize the traps and the strength of the lion to scare off the wolves. Silence is the ultimate veil of the fox. It hides your intentions, your fears, and your next move, while the nervous discomfort of the silence forces your opponent to reveal their hand. Machiavelli understood that the man who speaks the most is the man who is most vulnerable, for he is the one providing the world with the manual on how to defeat him. Thomas Shelby applies this 16th-century Italian wisdom to the gang wars of England with surgical precision. He understands that if he reacts emotionally to Kimber's insults, he has lost. If he argues, he has descended to Kimber's level. By staying silent, he maintains a higher status, signaling that Kimber's words are not even worth the breath required to refute them. To apply the law of strategic silence in your modern social zadres, you must first master the 4-second rule. When someone insults you, mocks your ideas, or attempts to diminish your status in a group setting, your biological impulse will be to defend yourself immediately. Resist it. Instead, look them directly in the eyes and count to 4 in your head. Do not break eye contact. Do not smirk. Do not frown. Simply exist in that space. This silence creates a psychological vacuum. In those 4 seconds, the aggressor's adrenaline spikes and then crashes. They expect a fight or a flight. When they get neither, they become confused. The embarrassment of the insult shifts from you back to them, as the rest of the room watches them flounder in the silence you've created. You have just made their disrespect expensive by making it socially awkward for them, without saying a single word. Furthermore, you must adopt the policy of information starvation. In your career or your personal ventures, never feel the need to explain why you are making a move. Explanations are the tools of subordinates seeking approval from their masters. When you explain your actions, you are essentially asking for permission to be right. A man of power, a Shelby, acts and lets the results speak for themselves. If you are leaving a job, starting a business, or ending a relationship, do not provide a roadmap of your reasoning to those who don't need to know. Keep your plans in the dark. As Machiavelli suggested, the element of surprise is a force multiplier. If people do not know what you are doing, they cannot prepare a defense, and more importantly, they cannot find the leverage points to disrespect your journey. In the brutal architecture of human interaction, there is no such thing as a minor offense. There is only a breach in your perimeter. If you allow someone to cross your line, and the only thing they encounter is your silence or a polite request for apology, you have effectively told the world that your territory is open for colonization. We move now to the most ruthless of the Shelby principles, the price of the slight. If they cross the line, you do not simply push them back. You burn the map they used to get there. Disrespect must always cost more than the offender can afford to pay. It is not about revenge. Revenge is an emotional reaction for the weak. This is about establishing a market price for your dignity that is so high it bankrupts anyone who dares to speculate against it. Consider the cold, calculated systematic destruction of the Changretta family after the death of Grace Shelby. When the bullet intended for Tommy took the life of the woman he loved, the common man would have spent his days in a fog of grief and chaotic, blind vengeance. But Thomas Shelby is not a common man. He is a master of the total war. He didn't just want the man who pulled the trigger, he wanted the entire infrastructure of the Changretta hierarchy to cease to exist. He understood that the death of a Peaky Blinder, and specifically the woman under his protection, was an act of supreme disrespect that threatened the very sovereignty of his empire. To respond with anything less than the total dismantling of his enemy would be a sign of terminal weakness. He waited, he planned, and he executed a strategy that saw the Italians losing their influence, their soldiers, and eventually their lives in a sequence of moves that felt like the closing of a tomb. Tommy's internal psychology in this period was one of absolute zero. He had moved beyond pain into a state of pure strategic utility. every action was designed to send a message to every other gang in London and Birmingham. The cost of touching a Shelby is everything you own and everyone you love. This is the manifestation of Machiavelli's most famous and most misunderstood dictate. Men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries, but for heavy ones they cannot. Machiavelli argued that if you must inflict an injury on a man, it should be so severe that his ability to strike back is permanently extinguished. A slight injury is a social mistake. It leaves the enemy alive, angry, and capable of retaliation. If you merely argue with someone who disrespected you, you have given them a slight injury. They will go home, stew in their resentment, and wait for the next opportunity to undermine you. But if you destroy their ability to harm you, socially, professionally, or financially, you have followed the Machiavellian path to security. Thomas Shelby understands that respect is not built on affection. It is built on the collective understanding that you are a man who can and will impose a catastrophic cost on any transgression. In your modern social zadres, applying this starts with immediate boundary setting. The first time someone crosses a line, whether it's a joke at your expense in a meeting or a subtle jab at your personal life, you must react instantly. You do not react with anger, as anger is a loss of control. You react with a cold, piercing clarity. If someone makes a disrespectful comment, stop the conversation. Look at them with the same detached curiosity Thomas Shelby uses when looking at a broken horse. Ask them to repeat themselves. When they do, ask them to explain exactly what they meant. Force them to own the disrespect in the cold light of day. Most people are cowards who rely on social ambiguity to get away with their slights. By forcing them into the light, you make the social cost of their behavior high. You are signaling that you are not a safe harbor for their insecurities. Then, there is the concept of social taxation. If someone interrupts you, do not fight to keep speaking. Stop immediately. Let them finish their thought. Then wait an extra 2 seconds of silence until the room feels the weight of the interruption. Then, instead of continuing your point, simply say, "Since you felt your point was more urgent than mine, I'll let the room sit with it. We'll move on." You have just taxed them with the loss of your valuable input. You have made their interruption expensive by turning it into the reason the conversation died. In professional settings, this is lethal. You are teaching others that if they do not respect the floor when you have it, they lose access to your mind entirely. You are not a service. You are a sovereign. As you move through the world, you must internalize the philosophy of the machine. To be a king, or to be a Shelby, you must accept that your emotions are variables that can be manipulated by your enemies. If you can be angered, you can be controlled. If you can be flattered, you can be blinded. We move now to Block 3, Sovereign Emotional Detachment. Regret is a luxury reserved for the common man who has the time to look backward. Logic is the only weapon that belongs in the hand of a king. The relationship between Thomas Shelby and Alfie Solomons is the masterclass in this detachment. Alfie is a man who betrays Tommy multiple times. In a world governed by emotion, Tommy would have killed Alfie the first time out of honor or hurt feelings. But Tommy views Alfie not as a friend, but as a high-value asset with a high risk of volatility. When Alfie betrays him, Tommy doesn't scream or spiral into a narrative of victimhood. He analyzes the betrayal as a business calculation. He looks at Alfie through the lens of pure utility. Even when he eventually shoots Alfie on the beach, it isn't an act of heated rage. It is a cleaning of the ledger. It is the removal of a variable that has become too expensive to maintain. Tommy's internal psychology is one of the observer. He watches his own life as if it were a film, detaching his core identity from the events occurring around him. This allows him to make decisions that would paralyze a normal man. He can sacrifice a piece to win the game because he does not confuse himself with the piece. Machiavelli would have looked at Tommy's detachment and seen the perfect prince. He taught that a leader must not care about being called cruel, provided he keeps his subjects united and loyal. The prince must know how to act like a beast, specifically the lion and the fox. And a beast does not feel guilt for the kill. Guilt and regret are social constructs designed to keep the masses in line. They serve no purpose for the man seeking sovereignty. Machiavelli understood that the stability of the state, or in your case, the stability of your empire and your status, requires the occasional use of cold, surgical cruelty. If you are too nice to fire an underperforming employee, or too loyal to leave a toxic circle, you are not being virtuous. You are being weak. You are allowing your emotions to sabotage your strategic interests. To apply sovereign emotional detachment today, you must first construct your poker face. This is more than just a lack of expression. It is the projection of a neutral, impenetrable energy. Whether you receive news that you've lost a major contract or that you've won $1 million, your external reaction should be identical. When people cannot read your emotional state, they cannot find your buttons. See? They cannot know what hurts you, which means they cannot know how to disrespect you effectively. Practice this in small moments. When someone tries to provoke you with a sarcastic comment, do not snap back. Look at them with a blank, calm expression, as if you are waiting for them to finish a very boring story. Your lack of emotional reaction is a signal of your superior status. Next, adopt the third-person perspective. When you are in a high-stress social situation or facing a conflict, mentally step out of your body. Imagine you are a grandmaster looking down at a chessboard. You are the player. The you in the room is just a piece. Ask yourself, what is the most logical move for this piece to make to secure the win? This removes the ego from the equation. If the logical move is to walk away, you walk away, regardless of how much your ego wants to stay and fight. If the logical move is to stay silent, you stay silent. By viewing your interactions as a game of chess, you strip away the power of others to hurt you. You cannot hurt a player by attacking his pawn. You only make him more focused on the next move. Respect is a fragile construct, often confused by the weak with popularity or the shallow warmth of being liked. But in the corridors of true power, being liked is a liability. It is a soft currency that devalues at the first sign of a crisis. If your goal is to be the nice guy, you have already surrendered your sovereignty to the whims of the collective. We move now to the foundation of enduring authority, the architecture of fear. It is a fundamental truth of the human condition that men love as they please, but they fear as the prince pleases. A sovereign does not leave his respect to the chance of others' affection. He anchors it in the certainty of their caution. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both, because fear is a tool you control, while love is a tool they use against you. To understand the mechanics of this architecture, one must look at how Thomas Shelby manages the internal structure of the Peaky Blinders. There is a specific, chilling moment when the family begins to drift, seduced by the comforts of the wealth Tommy has provided. They start to believe they are independent of the hierarchy, that they can make decisions without the crown's consent. Tommy does not respond with a plea for family unity or an emotional appeal to their shared blood. He reminds them, with a coldness that freezes the marrow, exactly who provides the roof over their heads and the safety in their streets. He invokes the name of the Peaky Blinders not as a suggestion, but as a heavy, looming consequence. He makes it clear that the alternative to his leadership is not freedom, but total, unmitigated destruction at the hands of their enemies. His internal psychology is one of absolute hierarchy. He views his family not just as kin, but as the structural pillars of his empire. If a pillar cracks or leans, it must be reinforced with the weight of consequence. Tommy understands that his brothers and associates must fear the cost of his displeasure more than they fear the threats of the outside world. This internal pressure is what keeps the organization lethal and cohesive. This strategy is the direct application of Machiavelli's 17th chapter in The Prince. Machiavelli argued that love is held by a chain of obligation, which, because men are selfish, is broken whenever it serves their purpose. But fear is maintained by a dread of punishment, which never fails. In the Machiavellian view, the prince must avoid being hated, but he must absolutely ensure he is respected through the potential for severity. If you are always available and always kind, you create an environment where others feel comfortable taking liberties with your time and your dignity. You are essentially inviting disrespect because there is no penalty for it. Machiavelli's wisdom dictates that the threat of the steel must always be visible behind the velvet of your social grace. Thomas Shelby lives this paradox perfectly. He is a gentleman in the parlor, but the room never forgets he is a butcher in the alley. In your modern social zadres, constructing this architecture requires the mastery of strategic unpredictability. The common man is a creature of habit. He is predictable, and therefore he is easy to manage and disrespect. To be a Shelby, you must occasionally deviate from the expected path. If you are always the one to pick up the tab, stop. If you are always the one to arrive early, arrive late, or don't show up at all. This creates a subtle undercurrent of anxiety in those around you. They begin to wonder what has changed, and in that wonder, a new level of respect is born. They realize they do not own your behavior. You are signaling that your compliance is not a given, and that your favor can be withdrawn without notice. Furthermore, you must project the steel behind the velvet. This is the art of being impeccably polite while maintaining a baseline of calculated coldness. In professional settings, you should be the most composed person in the room. Use sophisticated language, maintain perfect posture, and offer a firm, controlled handshake. But when a boundary is tested, let your warmth vanish instantly. Transition from a pleasant conversationalist to a detached observer in a heartbeat. This rapid shift in temperature is terrifying to most people. It signals that beneath your civilized exterior lies a capacity for a coldness they do not wish to encounter. You are not being a bully. You are being a sovereign who has zero tolerance for the degradation of his status. The second pillar of making your presence expensive is the understanding of scarcity. In the market of human value, anything that is infinitely available is perceived as worthless. The common man fears being alone, so he makes himself perpetually available. He responds to every message, attends every mediocre gathering, and offers his opinion to anyone who will listen. In doing so, he becomes cheap. He is social background noise. Thomas Shelby, however, understands that high value is found in the shadows. He is a man of strategic absence. He knows that his reappearances carry more weight because his disappearances are so absolute. Consider the periods in which Tommy Shelby vanishes from the bustling streets of Birmingham to his private estate, or into the clandestine world of high-level espionage. His family, his enemies, and the authorities are left in a state of frantic speculation. Where is he? What is he planning? Who is he meeting? In his absence, his legend grows. When he finally returns and enters a room, the atmosphere changes instantly. His presence is not just noticed, it is felt like a shift in atmospheric pressure. He has engineered a reality where his attention is a prize to be won, not a right to be expected. His internal psychology is built on the principle of the ghost. He identifies not with the noise of the world, but with the silence of the strategist. He knows that the more he is seen and heard, the more common he appears. By remaining scarce, he maintains the aura of an enigma, and an enigma is far harder to disrespect than a known quantity. Machiavelli noted that a prince must avoid being held in contempt, and that nothing makes a prince so much esteemed as great enterprises and setting a fine example. But he also cautioned that familiarity breeds contempt. To remain esteemed, the prince must maintain a certain distance from the masses. He must appear in public with gravity, and always under circumstances that reinforce his dignity. If a leader is seen every day in the marketplace, eating and drinking with the commoners, he loses the mystique that is necessary for command. Thomas Shelby treats his presence as a strategic asset. He does not waste it on trivialities. He understands that the less people know about your daily life, the more power you have over their imagination. And the imagination is where fear and respect are truly born. To apply the value of scarcity in the digital age, you must start with digital ghosting. Stop being the man who responds to every "hey" or "what's up" within 30 seconds. When you respond instantly to non-essential communication, you are telling the other person that your time is less valuable than their whim. You are effectively putting yourself on clearance. Instead, let messages sit. Reply in batches, or better yet, don't reply at all to low-value inquiries. Make people realize that reaching you is a task that requires a legitimate reason. This isn't about being busy, it's about being important. When you do eventually respond, your words carry the weight of a choice, not a compulsion. Next, master the early exit. In social gatherings, the common man stays until the lights come on, desperate to squeeze every last drop of fun or connection from the night. A Shelby does the opposite. He arrives, he makes his presence felt, he achieves his objective, whether that is networking with a specific individual or establishing his status. And then he leaves while the energy is still high. He leaves while people still want more of him. By exiting early, you become the topic of conversation for the rest of the night. You leave behind a vacuum that others try to fill with speculation. You have made yourself expensive by demonstrating that you have somewhere more important to be. You are the master of your own schedule, not a guest at someone else's. In the theater of human conflict, most men make the fatal mistake of fighting the person in front of them. They exhaust their energy in shouting matches, physical confrontations, or petty office politics, attempting to break the will of their opponent through sheer force. But a sovereign understands that the man is merely a shell. The true target is not the individual, but the network of interests that sustain him. We move to the sixth pillar of dominance, mastering the social chessboard. If you control what a man needs, you do not need to fight him. He will provide you with his own submission to protect his own survival. Leverage is not just a tool. It is the only true currency of respect in a world that respects nothing else. Consider the surgical precision with which Thomas Shelby maneuvers to secure his legal betting licenses. At this stage in his ascent, Tommy is facing a state apparatus that views him as a common criminal, a localized infection to be excised. He is dealing with magistrates and high-ranking police officials who hold the power to end his empire with the stroke of a pen. A lesser man would have tried to bribe them with crude piles of cash or threaten them with blunt violence, moves that would have eventually led to a prison cell or a gallows. Instead, Tommy maps the interests of his enemies. He identifies the pressures they face, the secrets they hide, and the ambitions they harbor. When he sits across from those in power, he doesn't ask for a favor. He presents a scenario where their own success is inextricably linked to his own. He makes it so that denying him the licenses would cause more damage to their careers and their safety than granting them. He doesn't fight the authorities, he becomes the variable they cannot afford to lose. His internal psychology is one of absolute detachment from the ego of the fight. He does not care if the magistrate likes him or respects his character. He only cares that the magistrate's self-interest forces him to comply. Tommy is not playing the man. He is playing the man's world. This is the pure application of Machiavelli's directive that a wise prince should rely on what he controls, not on what others control. Machiavelli understood that human loyalty is a shifting sand, but self-interest is a solid rock. If you rely on someone's kindness or fairness to treat you with respect, you are building your house on a swamp. But if you rely on their need for your resources, your information, or your silence, you are building a fortress. In The Prince, the emphasis is always on the strategic acquisition of leverage. You must find the vital center of your opponent, the thing they cannot live without, and you must place your hand upon it. Only then are you safe from their disrespect. Thomas Shelby understands that by holding the keys to the city's underbelly, he becomes an essential organ in the body of the state. He doesn't need to be loved by the law. He needs the law to be his debtor. To apply this to your modern social chessboard, you must first master asset identification. Stop looking at people as friends or enemies, and start looking at them as a collection of needs and vulnerabilities. What does your boss fear most? What does your rival in the social circle value above all else? Is it their reputation for being intellectual? Is it their financial stability? Is it their access to a specific group? Once you identify these assets, you don't necessarily attack them. You simply demonstrate, through subtle cues, that you have the power to influence them. If your boss knows that you are the only one who truly understands the architecture of a critical project, he cannot afford to disrespect you. Your competence is your leverage. You have made yourself an essential asset, and in doing so, you have made his disrespect too expensive to act upon. Next, you must cultivate the favor debt. This is the dark psychology of generosity. In any new environment, your first move should be to provide a high-value, low-cost favor to those you intend to manage. Solve a problem for them before they even ask. Provide an introduction they've been seeking. By doing this, you are not being a nice guy. You are placing a psychological weight upon them. Humans have a hardwired biological drive for reciprocity. By being the one who provides value first, you place the other person in a state of subconscious debt. When they think of disrespecting you or crossing your interests, that debt creates a mental friction. They will hesitate, not because they love you, but because their internal ledger tells them they cannot afford to lose the source of the value you provide. You are the creditor of the relationship, and the creditor always holds the power. Respect is often won in the room, but the most lethal form of respect is won before you even arrive. It is the respect born of a reputation that precedes you like a cold wind, silencing the room before you've uttered a single word. We move to the final pillar of the Shelby architecture, the reputation of the ghost. A sovereign does not have the time to fight every battle or correct every slight. He must build a name that does the fighting for him. He must become a myth, a brand, and a warning. When your reputation is built on a foundation of cold excellence and ruthless consequence, the masses will police themselves in your presence. They will not disrespect you, not because they are polite, but because they are terrified of what the ghost might do in response. The red right hand myth is the ultimate manifestation of this principle. In the streets of Birmingham, the mere mention of the Peaky Blinders or the name Shelby creates a physical reaction in the common criminal and the sophisticated adversary alike. This isn't just because of the bullets they've fired. It's because of the stories told about them. Tommy Shelby understands the power of the narrative. He knows that a reputation for being unstoppable, unshakable, and unpredictable is more valuable than 100 soldiers. He carefully curates the brand of the Shelby family. He ensures that every win is amplified and every loss is hidden or reframed. He doesn't brag, he allows the rumors to do the work. He understands that the human imagination is a factory for fear. If you give people a few high-quality data points of your ruthlessness and your brilliance, their own minds will fill in the rest, creating a version of you that is far more intimidating than any single man could ever be. His internal psychology is that of a brand architect. He views his name not as a personal identifier, but as a strategic weapon to be maintained with the utmost care. Machiavelli devoted significant portions of The Prince to the maintenance of reputation. He argued that a prince must strive in every action to give the impression of being a great man of remarkable ability. He noted that a prince who is highly esteemed is not easily conspired against. If your reputation is one of strength and strategic depth, people will think twice before attempting to slight you. They will assume that if you are allowing a slight to happen, it must be part of a larger trap. Machiavelli understood that the perception of power is, in many ways, more important than power itself. If the world perceives you as a man who makes disrespect expensive, they will treat you as such, regardless of your actual resources at that moment. The reputation is the shield that protects the sovereign from the death by 1,000 cuts that the common man suffers daily. To build the reputation of the ghost in your own life, you must first establish a standard of excellence that is borderline obsessive. Every piece of work you produce, every outfit you wear, and every interaction you have must be executed with such precision that it feels like an act of intent. When you do everything at a high level, the world begins to categorize you as a high-status individual. Disrespecting a man who is clearly a master of his craft feels like an act of insanity to the observer. You are not just a worker or a friend, you are a standard-bearer. Your excellence becomes your armor. People will hesitate to mock you because your results are an objective reality that cannot be argued with. You make yourself expensive by being undeniably superior in your chosen arena. Next, leverage the echo effect. Never be the one to tell the story of your own victories. Bragging is the mark of an insecure man seeking validation from the masses. It is the opposite of the Shelby way. Instead, let others do the talking. When you achieve a major win, stay silent. Let the rumors spread. Let the masses speculate on how you did it and what you'll do next. The stories others tell about you will always be more powerful and more frightening than anything you could say about yourself. By staying quiet, you allow the myth to grow. You become a ghost in the machine of your social or professional circle, felt everywhere, but never fully seen. This creates a psychological distance that commands a deep, visceral respect. We have arrived at the precipice of your transformation. The laws have been laid bare, the strategies codified, and the price of entry has been set. You are no longer the man who walked into this room, the one who accepted the crumbs of social approval and apologized for the space he occupied. You are now in possession of the architectural blueprints for a fortress of respect. But understand this: knowledge is the most dangerous form of vanity if it is not tempered by the fire of execution. We conclude this transmission with the final, most heavy realization of the sovereign path: the reign. Power is not a trophy you win and place on a shelf. It is a weight you carry, a silence you maintain, and a territory you defend every single hour of your existence. The crown is not made of gold. It is made of the cold, hard realization that you are alone at the top, and that is exactly where you belong. The synthesis of everything we have discussed, from the law of strategic silence to the reputation of the ghost, culminates in the image of Thomas Shelby at the end of his long, blood-soaked journey. There is a moment after the wars have been fought and the enemies have been buried, where Tommy sits alone. The noise of the world, the shouting of the Billy Kimbers, and the betrayals of the Alfie Solomons has faded into a dull hum. He has reached a state where his power is so absolute that it no longer needs to be announced. It is a quiet calculation, a settled reality. He doesn't need to look for disrespect because the world has been trained to avoid it. His internal psychology has shifted from that of a climber to that of a mountain. A mountain does not ask the wind to stop blowing. It simply stands, unshakable and indifferent, until the wind exhausts itself. This is the ultimate goal of making disrespect expensive. You reach a point of strategic irrelevance regarding the opinions of the masses. You have built a reality so fortified by consequence and scarcity that the common man's attempt to slight you feels like a pebble thrown at a fortress. You don't even hear the impact. This is the final lesson Machiavelli offers to the prince who has successfully seized his state. It is not enough to win power. One must know how to inhabit it. Machiavelli warned that the greatest danger to a sovereign is the transition from the struggle to the reign. Many men have the strength to fight, but few have the stomach for the silence of victory. To reign is to accept that you are the primary cause of everything in your life. There are no more excuses, no more victims, and no more bigger persons. There is only the sovereign and his will. Machiavelli's prince is a man who has transcended the common morality of the herd to create a new order. By making yourself expensive, by demanding a premium for your time and a tax for your dignity, you have exited the herd. You have stopped being a participant in the social contract of the weak and have started drafting your own. You are now the new prince in your own sphere of influence, and your reign depends entirely on your ability to remain as cold and calculated in peace as you were in war. The Shelby mantra is a brutal reminder of the hierarchy of reality. You've seen the methods, you've heard the philosophy, but knowledge without execution is just a daydream for the weak. Thomas Shelby didn't build an empire by watching the horizon or contemplating the what-ifs of history. He built it by doing. He built it by making the hard choice when others hesitated, by staying silent when others felt the need to scream, and by imposing a cost when others were too afraid to be called cruel. He understands that the world does not reward those who know. It rewards those who act upon what they know. The masses will watch this. They will feel a temporary spark of ambition, and then they will return to their predictable, cheap lives. They will continue to be interrupted, mocked, and overlooked because they lack the discipline to enforce the laws of power. They are comfortable in their subservience. But you who have stayed until the final word, you are different. Or at least, you have the potential to be. We end with a final challenge, a command for the sovereign you are becoming. Starting today, you will not try to be more like Shelby. You will simply be a man who is expensive. Identify one person in your life, a colleague, a friend, or a family member, who has consistently treated your time, your words, or your presence as a cheap commodity. Do not argue with them. Do not explain these laws to them. Simply execute the tax. The next time they cross the line, withdraw. Use the 4-second rule. Impose the silence. Let them feel the sudden, freezing vacuum of your detachment. Watch how they scramble to find the person they thought they could control, and find only the ghost. Prove to yourself that you are no longer free to be disrespected. Show the world that you have calculated your value and that the price of entry has just gone up. The world is a chessboard, and for too long you have been moved by hands you didn't even see. The game is over. The board is yours. Thomas Shelby didn't ask for the crown, and neither will you. You will simply occupy the throne through the sheer weight of your presence and the lethal precision of your boundaries. The masses stay loud. We stay lethal. This is the end of the transmission, but the beginning of your reign. Go out and make them pay. Comment "I am a Shelby" one last time to seal your intent. The era of the common man is over. Long live the sovereign.